Hey there, Dan Martell here, serial entrepreneur, investor, and creator of SaaS Academy. And in this video, I'm going to go totally left field and talk about how to raise growth-minded children. I get asked all the time. I figured why not shoot a video, and be sure to stay to the end. I'm going to share with you a video which I shot with my buddy Jarrett, my videographer, essentially a day in the life with my wife and my children, our rituals, our thoughts on communication, education. I'll tell you how to get access to that at the end. So let's rock it. So 6 years ago, I was blessed with the news that I was going to become a father. Now, at the time, you got to understand this. We were living in San Francisco, my wife and I. I had just started Clarity. I think I just closed my round of funding. My wife started a new agency with a co-founder, and we decided we were going to move back to Canada. Not at first, but eventually we did it. So then we did that. Then literally 2 months after our first son was born, we found out that my wife was pregnant with our second. So our two boys, Max and Noah, are 11 months apart. Now here's the crazy part. Even though that put a lot of strain on how I approach my day from a business point of view, from a health point of view, from a being a great husband for my wife point of view, the biggest concern I had growing up in a challenging environment was, how do I ensure that I don't continue the cycle that I was exposed to? And I say that because one of the number one thing, if I ask you this question, you're dying in a week. I don't mean to be morbid, but it's a really important question. If you're dying in a week, what are the 3 things that you would do in the next 7 days? And one of them for me was to teach my kids about life, about what I had learned, even though I came from some really challenging environments, what I had learned to eventually achieve some levels of success in my life in different areas. And that's where this whole process of reading all the best books on growth mindset and children's psychology and parenting, talking to sports psychologists, because they spend a lot of time trying to dissect and really connect high performance mindsets with athletic and children. And just getting some incredible ideas. So what I want to share with you is what I've learned so far. It's an early process, but I think if you're interested in this topic, you'll find it pretty fascinating. Number 1, meditation. So this might sound crazy, but I've been meditating with my kids for years, and they're just still little. And the way we do it is, it was really just about taking a few minutes. At first it started with 2 or 3 minutes. At night, sitting down, quiet breath, closing our eyes. And honestly, your kids are probably going to appreciate it, because anytime they're ready to go for bed, this is the way I did it. When it was bedtime, I always said, hey, do you want to go to meditate or do you want to go read a book? And they said, meditate, because all kids will do whatever they can to avoid going to bed. So, and we would just sit there, close our eyes, and do some breathing techniques. So that was when they were like 2 and 3, okay? Then as they kind of start understanding words and sentences and all that fun stuff, we use an app called Meditation for Children. It's awesome, it's simple, it's a 5.5-minute meditation. And what's crazy today is my children actually guide the meditation. I'm not even joking. We'll sit there, and Max and Noah right before we read our books, they'll each take turns guiding the meditation. Now, do they miss 30 to 40% of the content? Absolutely. But do they feel empowered and excited to actually do that meditation? 100%. And then so essentially on the 3rd night, we play the app. So number 1, I think it's important from a mindfulness approach of making sure your kids are focused and understand how the mind plays into their world, and also an awareness of being able to teach them that where their awareness goes, their energy flows. And I think that's such a powerful thing, even if they don't get that concept today, to kind of instill at the beginning. Number 2, growth mindset. Now, there's an incredible book by Carol Dweck written on this topic. She has a chapter that speaks specifically to children. And for me, this is everything. You know, most of the world's population run around with the belief, this is the belief, the quick test, that their IQ is fixed. 80% of the world's population believes that they can't get smarter, when all the science and statistics and all that stuff prove that that's absolutely wrong. 80% of the population believe. The ones that are in the 20%, they're the ones that achieve. They're the ones that grow. They're the ones that, when you look at their performance, the high performance people, and that just means that over a period of time, they sustain a higher quality of life in all aspects of their life, those folks have a growth mindset. So what I've done is I've taken everything from that book and tried to apply it to my kids to teach them the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. One of the biggest thing is just the act of trying and failing. So one of my favorite questions to ask my kids when I pick them up at school is, what have you failed at today? And I'll sit there and let them stumble, and they're like, nothing. I go, did you try anything that didn't work out the way you thought? Yes, this thing. Awesome, congratulations. I celebrate the failure or the trying, because that is the core essence of growth mindset. So try that with your kids. Number 3, encourage the effort. So one of the biggest things that I've taken away on the realm of growth mindset is when a child does something impressive to them and to you maybe, they want to come out and they want to be recognized for the outcome. What I do is I quickly reverse it and say, how much energy did you put in getting that outcome? How many times did you try? So my son recently learned to ride his bike. Instead of being like, oh my God, you're amazing, you're riding your bike, I said, hey, you know, how many times did you try to ride your bike? Dozens of times. Did you fall? Yes. But you kept getting back up. Yes. Awesome. That is cool. That is the part that Dad is super proud of you about, is the fact that you didn't stop and you kept trying, because now you can ride a bike, and that's going to allow you to do a whole bunch of stuff, because next week I'm going to teach you how to launch yourself off that jump. No, my wife always stops me before we get to that point. But that to me is a huge shift in just even the way we communicate with our kids, is to encourage the effort. Number 4, recognize the journey. I think too often as adults, definitely as kids, we make progress and we don't kind of look at how far we've come. Just think about this. If you were just heads down hiking a mountain, you wanted to climb some crazy mountain, and just one step in front of the other, and you're breathing and your hydration and your energy levels, and you're just going. If you just kept looking up, you might feel super deflated that there's still this ungodly amount of elevation that you got to make. But if you stop, look behind you, and take in the inspiration of the distance that you've already traveled, that is the motivation to keep going. And to me, that is something I learned from my buddy Todd Herman, incredible high-performance coach, a mindset guy. We were talking about, children and growth mindset, because he's got 3 incredible children. It is really just recognize the journey, and that distinction was super new to me, and I think it is probably one of the most important parts that's never talked about around growth-minded children, is just allow them to recognize how far they've come from where they started, so they can get excited about continuing on and realizing that sometimes it's persistence in time and focus and trying that's going to get them those outcomes. Number 5, words matter. Now, I believe that people play in, especially children that don't know a lot about kind of like positive mental attitude and whatnot, they play into the labels we give them. And you're probably doing this unconsciously. You're saying, man, he's really good at math. He's not so good at math, but he's really good at this, or he's really good at that. I am ridiculously careful what I label my children at good or bad at. Why? Because I've studied and read so many biographies of so many people that had different circumstances, and regardless of what they were good or bad at, they overcame those odds. And I never want my children to ever feel that because somebody said they weren't good at a topic, that's true, because it's not. If you believe in the growth mindset, you know that can be rewired and change and grow. So it's just not true. So, even to the point that my kids, Max and Noah, I actually called them that because I read somewhere in all these different parenting books that your oldest is typically more timid and the second is a little bit more wild. So my oldest is called Max because I want him to stand into that energy. And I think I read about Dennis the Menace. Like, a lot of kids named Dennis, there's a disproportionate amount of people incarcerated named Dennis. I don't have the data set on this. I read it in a book, and it kind of made some sense. If I was picking names that I liked, I just kind of indexed towards 2 that made sense. And Noah is my second oldest because I need him to chill out and calm down a little bit. Now, crazy enough, it turned out that way. Who knows if it would have been different if they had different names. But to me, words matter. So much, though, that I'm very conscious to the language that I use, how to describe their skills, their strengths, and really what words I use. Because I think that the example I set is going to be so important to the way they approach their family in the future and the way they interact with the rest of the world. So quick recap on how to raise growth-minded children. 1, meditation, bring awareness. 2, build a growth mindset. 3, encourage the effort. 4, recognize the journey. And 5, words matter. As I mentioned at the beginning, I want to share a micro documentary that I created called The Integrated Family. I shot it with my buddy Jarrett, and in it, it's really a day in the life of my wife and I and our two kids. I pretty much let Jarrett come into my house at 4:30 in the morning and just kind of sneak his way around, videotaping all aspects, and interviewed my wife and I about ideas around how we communicate with each other and the challenges that we face and overcome them, how we think about education, our children's rituals and routines, and a bunch of other stuff. And not that I feel we have it figured out, but I think it might inspire you to just have a different perspective on family, business, and trying to get as much as you can out of your day. So the link is below. Click that. Have a look. If there's somebody else that you think it could serve, feel free to share it with them. If you like this video, click the like button, subscribe to my channel, and as per usual, I want to challenge you to live a bigger life and a bigger business, and I'll see you next Monday. Bam, 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 bam. Yeah. All right.